The long-awaited Hydroid Rework is finally here, and with it has brought some mixed feelings. If you don't know what's involved in Hydroids Rework, Hydroid has gained a new passive revolving around corrosive status effects. So any enemy simply hurt by Hydroid will now have 50% of their armor stripped from the first corrosive status effect they receive, and a further 6% for every other corrosive effect, which results in a full 100% armor strip. I can't begin to tell you how powerful this is. Being able to fully strip enemy armor simply by applying corrosive effects from any source, as long as Hydroid damages the enemy somehow, makes it the easiest armor strip effect in the game. This passive is easily one of, if not the, best passive. Alongside this, Hydroid's abilities have received a damage type change into corrosive, so they fall in line with his passive, and some quality of life changes such as removing the charge effect on his Tempest Barrage and Tentacle Swarm, and tentacles no longer fling enemies around like a toddler who had their ice cream stolen. However, RIP Puddle. Hydroid's Undertow has now been removed, and in its place, we have been given Plunder. And this is where the rework hits some contention. Plunder is a snapshot type ability, meaning when cast, it will check all enemies in range and count how many corrosive status effects are on those enemies. It will then make any armor stripping effects from those corrosive effects permanent, and in doing so, provide Hydroid with extra armor based on the amount of armor stolen, as well as a damage buff for all of your damage sources based on the number of corrosive status effects counted. On paper, this sounds great, until you realize Hydroid doesn't need any of this. He's already fully capable of stripping enemy armor with 10 corrosive effects, and can keep this up for an extremely long time. By the time you've stopped applying corrosive, the enemy is usually dead, meaning a permanent armor strip just isn't needed. This then means all Plunder is used for is a damage buff, which sadly makes it just a renamed Nourish but for corrosive, and will also reset its damage bonus if you recast the ability, making it anti-synergistic with itself. The idea of Plunder is to use it constantly to permanently strip armor, but doing so will potentially reduce your damage buff. So why would you want to do this? Short answer is, you wouldn't. All of Hydroid's kit, even as it is now, is actually designed around Undertow. Tempest Barrage could hit enemies pulled into the puddle, Tidal Surge allowed you to move around quickly while you were in puddle, and Tentacle Swarm spawn radius could be controlled by casting while you're in puddle. This made Undertow the single most synergistic ability within Hydroid's kit, and now it's been removed. This leaves all the rest of his abilities high and dry, so to speak. It doesn't help matters that Tempest Barrage and Tentacle Swarm have entirely different base ranges, and Tempest Barrages can't even be modified. Now, unfortunately, the only synergies Hydroid actually has is with his passive, which fundamentally changes how Hydroid plays. Instead of an area control heavy CC frame, he's now become basically a weapons platform. The footage you're seeing here is with an entirely unmodded Hydroid using no abilities whatsoever, with an Occucore which is modded just for heat and corrosive, as that's what I could make with my Riven, and a worm. While this is fun at first, WM1ing into enemies with no mods equipped and no ability usage, and still just being nearly as effective as if I did have mods equipped and using abilities, does not say to me personally that Hydroid is much of an interactive frame anymore. Before this rework, much of Hydroid's kit you had to really think about and utilize. This footage here shows a puddle setup utilizing Pillage and Magus Anomaly, which as you can see is absolutely annihilating Steel Path enemies, and is requiring me to really interact with the frame, abilities, and build that I have on. This build primarily works thanks to the armor strip of Pillage and grouping abilities of Magus Anomaly, as well as the iframes that the puddle actually provides me. Now that Hydroid has an armor strip, his puddle would be able to make extensive use of its scaling damage, but unfortunately it's been entirely removed before we could even try it. All that's left then is lacking a grouping ability, but there's loads of ways to do that in the game anyway. But what could DE have done? Well, they could have kept the puddle, simply by combining both Undertow and Tidal Surge into a new tap and hold type ability. Tap for puddle and hold for Tidal Surge. I certainly think this would have been a better solution than outright removing such an iconic and synergistic ability. What do you think? I know there are many who are enjoying the Hydroid rework, and that's great if you are. I certainly think it's a step in the right direction for our favourite swashbuckling space wobby, and we'd like DE to take another look and reconsider adding Undertow to a tap hold for Hydroid's second ability. That is all for me today. If you liked the video, leave a like, consider subscribing for more, check over at my Twitch where all of this footage was gathered, and I'll be seeing you for now.